Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. He was Britain's youngest Prime Minister of the 20th century. Charismatic, modern, and determined to change everything. Tony Blair promised a new Labour and a new Britain. But his legacy remains controversial. Who was Tony Blair? How did he rise to power? And why did he become one of the most debated leaders in modern British history? Let's find out. Anthony Charles Linton Blair, known as Tony Blair, was born on May 6, 1953, in Edinburgh, Scotland. His father was a barrister and wanted to become a Conservative Member of Parliament. But after he suffered a stroke, that dream ended. Tony Blair went to Oxford University, where he studied law. He was not just a student. He also played in a rock band, showing a bit of the modern and relaxed style that he would later bring into politics. In 1983, when he was just 30 years old, Blair was elected as a Labour MP for Sedgefield. This was the beginning of a political career that would completely change British politics in the years to come. In the 1980s, the Labour Party was going through a very difficult time. It was deeply divided between its left-wing and more moderate members. The party kept losing elections again and again, while the Conservative Party, first under Margaret Thatcher and then John Major, stayed in power. Many people in Britain saw Labour as old-fashioned and not ready to run the modern country. During this tough time, Tony Blair joined Parliament and quickly made a name for himself. People liked his energy, clear speeches, and his fresh ideas. Blair believed that if Labour wanted to win again, it had to change and move closer to the centre. Not too far left, not too far right. He wanted to modernize the party and make it more attractive to ordinary working people, and the middle class too. He was not alone. There were other modernizers in Labour too, like Gordon Brown and Peter Mandelson, but Blair was the most confident and media-friendly of them all. He spoke about new ideas, about changing with the times, and about finding a balance between helping people through social programs and keeping the economy strong and responsible. In 1994, something unexpected happened. Labour's leader at the time, John Smith, suddenly died of a heart attack. It was a huge shock for the party. Blair, who was only 41 years old, decided to stand for the leadership. Many people thought he was young and maybe too new. But he had a clear plan and a strong message. Tony Blair won the leadership election and became the youngest leader of the Labour Party in modern history. As soon as he took charge, he started transforming the party's image. He and his team came up with a new name: New Labour. This was not just a name. It was a signal that Labour was no longer stuck in the old ways. Under New Labour, the party promised something fresh. They said they would combine social justice with economic responsibility. That meant they would protect workers, help the poor, invest in schools and hospitals. But at the same time, they would support businesses, control government spending, and not scare away investors. Blair and his team worked hard to convince the British people that Labour had changed. They dropped old ideas that did not work anymore, like too much nationalization, and focused on education, health, and modern jobs. Blair also used modern communication, TV, newspapers, catchy slogans, to reach people directly. People who once thought Labour was just for trade unions and protests now saw it as a smart, centrist party ready to lead Britain into a new century. Blair himself looked modern too. Young, energetic, confident, with a friendly style that made him different from old, serious politicians. By the mid-1990s, polls showed that New Labour, under Blair, was getting more and more popular. After years of losing, hope was returning to Labour supporters. Blair's clear message, modern image, and promise of balance made him stand out. This was the start of a big political shift in Britain. And it all began with a young politician who believed that changing with the times was the only way to win. In 1997, Britain was truly ready for change. For 18 years, the Conservative Party had ruled the country, first under Margaret Thatcher, then under John Major. Many people felt tired of the same old policies. There was a feeling that the country needed something new, fresh, and more hopeful. Tony Blair and his new Labour understood this mood perfectly. Blair's message was simple but powerful, a promise of hope, modern ideas, and national renewal. He spoke about better schools, better hospitals, more jobs, and a strong but fair economy. People saw him as young, energetic, and different from the old-style politicians. When the 1997 general election came, Blair and Labour won by a historic landslide. It was the biggest win in Labour's entire history. They won seats not only in their usual strong areas, but also in places that had voted Conservative for years. Many voters who had never supported Labour before felt they could trust Blair. At just 43 years old, Blair became Britain's youngest Prime Minister since 1812. His age, style, and modern approach made him a symbol of a new Britain that wanted to leave behind old fights and old divisions. This time was soon called Cool Britannia. It was more than politics. It was about culture too. British music, art, and fashion were booming around the world. Bands like Oasis, Blur, and the Spice Girls were topping charts everywhere. Designers and artists were famous again. Britain felt young and confident. Blair's government used this cultural energy to show the world that Britain was modern and open. He invited famous musicians and celebrities to his events. He gave speeches about a forward-looking country that mixed tradition with progress. For many people, those early years of Blair's leadership felt like a breath of fresh air. After years of recession, strikes, and old political battles, Britain seemed excited about the future. Blair's huge win and the Cool Britannia spirit showed how strongly people wanted something new. But behind the music, style, and excitement, big decisions and big challenges still waited for Blair and his government. After winning by a huge landslide, Tony Blair's government started focusing on improving everyday life for people. One of the main promises of New Labour was to invest more money in public services, things like schools, hospitals, and public transport. Blair's government increased spending on education. More money went into hiring teachers, repairing old school buildings, and raising standards in classrooms. The idea was to give every child, rich or poor, a better chance to succeed in life. In healthcare, the government put more funds into the National Health Service, NHS. They aimed to cut long waiting times, build new hospitals, and hire more nurses and doctors. The goal was to make sure everyone could get treatment faster and closer to home. Another big step was the introduction of the national minimum wage. Before this, Britain did not have a legal minimum amount that workers had to be paid. Many low-paid workers struggled to survive on very low wages. Blair's minimum wage law meant millions of people got a fairer pay and more protection at work. Blair also made historic changes to how the UK was governed. His government gave devolution, which means giving more powers and decision-making to local governments, to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Scotland got its own parliament, Wales got its own assembly, and Northern Ireland started sharing power between Unionists and Nationalists. One of Blair's biggest achievements was the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. For decades, Northern Ireland had suffered from violent conflict known as the Troubles, with bombings, shootings, and deep divisions between Protestants and Catholics. Blair and his team worked with Irish leaders and local parties to help them reach an agreement for peace. The Good Friday Agreement brought a new era of relative peace and power sharing. It ended most of the violence, gave people hope for the future, and is still seen as one of the most important peace deals in modern British history. At home, many people praised Blair for modernizing Britain. They felt he made the country feel more confident and forward-looking. But not everyone agreed. Some critics said Blair's government cared too much about image, that they focused more on media management, catchy headlines, and public relations than on real change. This idea of spin, carefully controlling how news is presented, became a word often linked to Blair's time in power. Even so, for millions, those early years felt like a time when Britain was investing in its people and trying to be fairer and more modern. Tony Blair's biggest controversy, and the thing that shaped how many people see him even today, was the Iraq War. After the terrible 9/11 attacks in the United States in 2001, the whole world changed. The U.S., under President George W. Bush, started what they called the War on Terror, first attacking Afghanistan to remove the Taliban and hunt down Osama bin Laden. Tony Blair stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States. He believed that Britain should support its closest ally and show that they would not stand by when terrorism threatened the world. At first, many people in Britain agreed with Blair's decision to support the U.S. in Afghanistan. They felt it was necessary to stop more terror attacks. But then, things moved towards Iraq. In 2003, the U.S. and Britain claimed that Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein, had weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. Terrible chemical or biological weapons that could be used to kill thousands of people. Blair argued that Saddam was a danger to the world and must be stopped before he could do more harm. Many people trusted Blair. He gave powerful speeches, saying Britain had to act to protect its people and the world. In Parliament, he made the case again and again that the evidence showed Saddam had these weapons and that the risk of doing nothing was too high. So, in March 2003, British forces joined the Americans and invaded Iraq. At first, the military campaign was quick. Saddam's government collapsed, and he was captured later and put on trial. But soon, the problems began. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found. Inspectors searched all over Iraq, but found nothing like what had been claimed. Many people felt they had been misled, that the government had exaggerated or misunderstood the evidence. Meanwhile, Iraq fell into chaos. Violence between different groups grew. Terrorist attacks, bombings, and civil war killed thousands of Iraqis. British and American soldiers kept dying too. The mission that started with promises of freedom and safety became a long, painful conflict with no clear end. Back in Britain, millions of people felt betrayed and angry. Huge protests took place. In fact, the 2003 anti-Iraq war protest in London is still one of the largest demonstrations in British history. People carried signs saying, "Not in my name," and demanded that Britain pull its troops out. Tony Blair, however, never backed down. He always defended his decision. He said he believed the world was still better off without Saddam Hussein, that removing a brutal dictator was the right thing to do, even if the weapons were never found. Blair argued that he had acted on the best information he had at the time, and that leaders sometimes had to make tough choices. But for many people in Britain and around the world, the Iraq War overshadowed all the good things Blair did at home. His big wins on health, education, the minimum wage, and peace in Northern Ireland were all pushed aside in people's minds by the anger over Iraq. The war also damaged trust in politics. Many people lost faith in government promises and felt politicians did not always tell the truth. Blair's image as a modern, honest leader was hurt badly and never fully recovered. Even after leaving office, Blair was questioned about Iraq many times. Reports and official inquiries looked into whether he misled Parliament. Some people still call him a war criminal, while others say he did what he thought was right at a very difficult time. Today, when people talk about Tony Blair, they remember both sides. The young leader who modernized Britain and the prime minister who led the country into a controversial war that left deep scars at home and abroad. In 2007, after 10 years as prime minister, Tony Blair decided it was time to step down. His popularity had dropped because of the Iraq War and growing tension inside his own party. Many people in the Labour Party thought it was time for new leadership. So, Blair resigned and handed over power to his longtime chancellor and political partner, Gordon Brown. Blair left Downing Street with a mixed legacy. Some people remembered him as the leader who modernized Britain, brought peace to Northern Ireland, and improved schools and hospitals. Others mainly saw him as the man who took Britain into a deeply unpopular war. After leaving office, Blair made another big personal change. He converted to Catholicism. He had been an Anglican all his life, but his wife, Sherry Blair, is Catholic, and he decided to officially join her faith once he was no longer Prime Minister. Blair didn't just disappear from public life. He set up the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, an organization that works on issues like good governance, fighting extremism, and promoting economic development around the world. Through this, he tried to use his experience to help other countries deal with modern challenges. He also worked as an international envoy for peace in the Middle East, especially trying to help find solutions to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. However, his efforts there were often criticized, and many felt he couldn't achieve the breakthroughs he had once hoped for. Outside politics, Blair found ways to earn big money. He gave highly paid speeches around the world, became a consultant for businesses and governments, and offered advice to global leaders. Over the years, he has earned millions of pounds, which made headlines many times. To some people, this huge income proved that New Labour under Blair was always too close to big business and powerful corporations. His critics say that after promising a fairer society, he ended up benefiting from the same world of money and influence that he once promised to reform. But his supporters argue that he used his skills, contacts, and experience to help solve global problems, and that he has every right to earn money after such a demanding political career. Today, Blair remains a controversial but important figure. He gives interviews, writes articles, and shares his views on how Britain and the world should handle big challenges, like technology, climate change, and extremism. Whether people love him or hate him, there's no doubt that Tony Blair's time in power changed Britain in big ways, and that debate over his legacy is still alive today. Tony Blair left office with 3 election victories, something no other Labour leader has achieved since. His supporters see him as the man who brought Labour back to power, modernized Britain, and helped secure peace in Northern Ireland. His critics see him as the man who misled the public over Iraq and turned politics into PR. Today, his legacy is mixed, but there's no doubt Tony Blair changed Britain forever. Love him or loathe him, Tony Blair shaped a generation. But what do you think? Was he a visionary leader or a reckless politician? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.